Welcome back. You're watching KTN Business Today. We are now in the second part of the program, and we'll be talking matters to do with the medical investments. Well, just before the conversation begins, Square Pharmaceuticals Limited, a Bangladesh-based company, has announced a 7.5 billion shilling investment that will see the construction of a local pharmaceutical plant at the export processing zone in Athi River. Spread across 16 acres, the facility will manufacture a range of 2 billion tablets and 60 million bottles of liquids of medicine for the local and export market in Africa. This will include drugs for communicable diseases such as HIV/AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis, and non-communicable diseases such as diabetes, cardiovascular diseases, and antiphysiotic disease within 5 years of initiation of manufacturing. Currently, the local pharmaceutical manufacturing sector has the capacity to supply only 28%, nearly 70% of Kenya's pharmaceutical demand.
As government, under the leadership of President Kenyatta, about 4.5 years ago, in making sure that we attract investments into this country and make sure that the level of investments, both domestic and foreign, increases substantially.
Despite the business opportunity, the local manufacturing facilities here in the capacity of 30% total demand in this region that is manufactured locally, and 70% is still dependent, Kenya is dependent on import.
Well, to expand the conversation now, I'm joined by Tapan Chaudhary, who is the Managing Director for Square Pharmaceuticals, and we have Fanuel Kidenda, Chief Executive Officer of EPZA. Many thanks, gentlemen, for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
And interesting times for Africa. We are seeing a lot of foreign direct investments coming through. Perhaps, what would you describe the latest investments by Square Pharmaceuticals into Kenya, and why Kenya?
Interesting question. The reason we are here in Kenya is from 2004, our products are available in Kenya and also the other neighboring countries, but more so Kenya, and because we have, through our partner Ace Pharma, we have been distributing our products in Kenya particularly. And also the Kenyan drug regulatory authorities, especially the auditors, they have been regularly visiting our facilities to see whether we comply the GMP standards, the WHO standards, and also other regulatory requirements, whether we're fulfilling it or not. So all these years we had been sending our products through exports, but we feel the time has come when we should have our own facilities there in Africa. It's not only for Kenya also, but the East African countries and also the commercial, and to Europe and also to Asia.
All right.
So this is the first step. Yesterday we had a groundbreaking, and we are very happy to be here.
All right.
And the tremendous support so far we have received from all the agencies is simply amazing.
All right. Well, of course, you raise a pertinent issue of the historical ties you have with Kenya as an investor. And of course, the export business, Mr. Kidenda, has continued to experience some sort of sluggishness, where we're looking at exports in the East African region, for example. We are seeing they're not growing as fast as the Kenya government would want. Perhaps, what does this signify for EPZA, the coming of a new pharmaceutical plant that will be servicing the region?
Thank you. Maybe just to take you to the background of the EPZ Authority. We were established in 1990, and over the years we've grown. From having one zone, today we have 71 zones across the country. We host about 150 companies operating in different sectors. A significant number have been in agro-processing in areas such as textile and apparel, for which we are mostly known for.
Correct.
And by and large, we're having more companies investing in pharmaceuticals. To date, we have about 5 companies that have already invested. And with the coming in of Square Pharmaceuticals, and we're very privileged to host Square Pharmaceuticals, we will have 6. And we should be able to then be able to address the sales into not only the regional markets, such as the EAC, COMESA regions, but also into other parts of the world. Now, coming back to your question about the limitations around our exports and the sluggish growth, there has been growth in exports, especially around the EPZ companies. Last year, for instance, we did exports in excess of 68 billion Kenyan shillings across different sectors. Agro-processing, for instance, had about 14 billion shillings worth of exports. Textiles had 34 billion shillings worth of exports. And by, we are increasing in other sectors. Now, the limitation has been on the basis of the EAC region being considered a domestic market. And therefore, there's a limitation in terms of the amount that you can sell, which is limited to 20%. We hope that with ongoing discussions around increasing the threshold, we'll be able to have more of EPZ companies selling into the region, even as they target other markets.
All right. And let me come back to TAP. And really, right now, that you've made this desire to invest heavily in a plant, what's the trickle down for the average Kenyan in terms of jobs and also the cost of healthcare at the end of the game?
Yeah. That's where we come in, because let me give you which we are doing back home. Squares is a 60 years old company, and by far the largest pharmaceutical company in the country. But as a group, we are one of the top 5 business houses in the country. And over the last 60 years, we have learned, and we have been working with a number of the multinational companies. So ours is US FDA approved, the UK MHRA, the TGA, the South African authority. But our strength is, because we have never forgotten that when we operate in a country like Bangladesh, there are many of the people cannot afford to or do not have access to these the basic healthcare facilities, and especially the drugs and medicine. And that's where we come in, and we believe that it's the same here in Africa also. And so we have the technology, we have the expertise, and that is our challenge, to make this product available at a much more competitive price in Africa. That's where we come in, and that's what exactly we are doing in our region and in many parts of the world.
And talking about the cost of healthcare, we're also seeing other countries like India showing interest in Kenya, indicating they'll be setting up a cancer facility. And what do you see in the bigger picture of Africa and East Africa, really, in terms of healthcare provision, where we are seeing talk of medical tourism also being a key issue that could crop up once we have efficient healthcare systems?
To us, especially this region, is a land of opportunity, because I don't think any country would like to be dependent on the imported products. And since it's a very big market, and the way that Africa is growing, and especially this, you only produce around only 28% of your consumption only in Kenya. So that 70% markets are carried by the products from all over the world. So it's not a very pleasant situation. So there we see big opportunity. And also the communicable diseases, also non-communicable diseases also increasing. So around 30% of it, by 2030, it's going to be, unless we address these challenges, Africa would face a really, really tough time.
All right.
So that's one of the reasons that we feel it's time for us to step in and to work in this market. So it's not only for the business; it's something much more than that.
All right.
It's a commitment.
And Kidenda, now that you're seeing droves and droves of investors gaining their appetite to invest in Kenya, the biggest barrier to entry has, of course, been the ease of doing business in Kenya, the cost of electricity, the efficiency to which it comes to be set up at the EPZ. How do we address these issues from a point where we can be able to smoothen the landing surface for investors and, of course, address issues of red tape as well?
That's an interesting question, because that's actually the reason why programs such as the EPZ Authority and the EPZ program are established, to address some of those issues. By and large, as a government, what we've done in the last couple of years is address issues around ease of doing business. You've seen significant improvements in terms of rankings for the country, and this has been on the back of reforms that have been undertaken in terms of how you establish a company, the number of steps you have to go through, how many agencies you've got to deal with to be able to then set up a new company. So that has drastically improved the investment environment. In addition to that, there's been investment in issues such as power production. There's increased supply at the moment, and power costs have been coming down.
But still costly.
Yes, they've been costly in the past, but they've been coming down over the last couple of years. I can tell you, for instance, about 4 years ago, we did a survey of the EPZ companies, and we found that the companies were paying about 21 shillings for a kilowatt hour.
Correct.
Today, it's down to about 12, 13. And if you operate out of the EPZ, you get incentives such as value-added tax exemptions, and therefore you're 16% cheaper. That enables you to be more competitive as you export out. Other areas relate to facilitation of investors around work permits. We work closely with other government agencies, such as the Immigration Department, to assist investors get their work permits within a very short period of time. We also work with the customs services. They have customs officers at each of the EPZs, so that documentation of imports and exports are only done within the EPZs. The same applies to Kenya Ports Authority. For any exports or imports coming into the EPZs, we have a green channel arrangement, and they don't need to go to container freight stations, which would delay and increase their costs. They're able to do the documentation and load the containers out of the port within a period of about 48 hours.
All right, gentlemen, as we get just your closing thoughts, Tapan, where do you see the medical sector, say, in the next 10 years in Kenya?
To us, we see a tremendous opportunity. Right now, as I mentioned to you, it's in dollar terms, it's a $600 market, this Kenya. And to us, we feel in 2030, you mentioned, right? So surely, according to we haven't done up to that, we have done only up to 2025. And I feel by that time it would be around $3 billion. By 2030, it would be probably around $3 billion markets. That would be the market size here. But if you add up Africa, of course, it's much more attractive. And that's one of the reasons that you see now the investors are really interested, and then they're coming into.
All right. Well, we do give special thanks for being able to be with us this afternoon. We've been speaking there to Tapan Chowdhury, who is the Chief Executive Officer of Square Pharmaceuticals, as well as Fanuel Kidenda, the CEO of EPZA, just trying to get the direction with which